What is up, guys? I'm Kyle at Fortune. Today we're putting the brakes and the steering on the front axle of the Samurai. So this is the last video before we throw this front axle back in the Samurai. This video jumps around a little bit because I had a bunch of parts that didn't want to come apart. And you know, when you're working on trucks, sometimes things just don't go the way you want to. This was one of those times. The pitman arm on the steering box would not come off. Because I couldn't get it off, I had to take the whole steering box off, had to take the steering linkage off, all of that stuff, and then put it back on. So that was a bunch of extra added steps. So here we've got the stock two-piece shackle, and you can see these bolts just run straight through. They're a small shackle and they only take the OEM bushing, so that is a weak point. You can see these ones need to be replaced. They're all cracked up anyways. So we're going to toss this whole thing and we're going to upgrade the front shackles. Here are the upgraded shackles we're going to be going with from Low Range Off-Road. These are described as being a 1-inch lift shackle, which actually only nets you half an inch, but you can see they're much bigger and much thicker than the stock ones. But in order to run these, you're going to have to run aftermarket bushings for the springs. Usually when I'm working with old leaf springs, I like to take that center pin out, separate the leaves, and that way you can get a good look at them. Maybe change the packs around a little bit to get something that's going to be more off-road worthy. In this case, the pin and the nut both fit in our new spring purchase, so I didn't need to take them apart, so I decided to skip that. I already know these front Samurai leaf springs are some of the weakest springs out there. They're really just not good for much unless you're keeping your Samurai stock. So I have a feeling these are going to bend or break soon. Later on, we're definitely going to be swapping these out with something else. Probably running rear Samurai springs up front, but it's just not in the cards right now because it is going to change the lift, make us need a longer drive shaft and other things. So for now, we're sticking with the stock Samurai springs. Here are the bushings we're going to replace them with. So here's the OEM stuff on this side, and here is the upgraded parts we're going to be using. And you can see the quality difference there is well worth it. Hopefully this is going to help our suspension last longer and run quieter. It looks like the sleeve is the same size, but when you run it through the bolt, it doesn't fit, so it must be slightly bigger than the OEM shackle. So we've got a bunch of brake components here. We're going to clean these off and reuse as much as we can, but of course we're going to be running some new brake pads and also some new rotors. Because both sides had a bunch of gouging in them, we're just going to get some fresh components. Here are the rotors and the brake pads I'm going to be going with. If you want to see what brand they are, you can check it out in the description. I'll put a link to where I bought them from. Now we've got the stock tie rod on here just to keep everything nice and straight, so later on when we set up the steering it'll be much easier to dial in since we had a good alignment before this whole thing started. Taking off this front bumper was a huge help because it made access to everything much easier. Plus we're going to need to get in there when we start welding on the frame plates. As you can see, this bumper isn't very tough. This one obviously lost the last battle it fought with a pull, so it's got to come off. Looks kind of weird having this much of the tie rod end sticking out, but the directions say only remount the pitman arm enough to just get that cotter pin through. So that's how it looks. Definitely looks strange. Speaking of tie rods, comparing the stock tie rod end with these FJ81s, you can see how much thicker the shank is there. And overall, it's just slightly bigger than the OEM stuff. Here's a look at the stock drag link next to the one that Trail Gear supplies. You can see how much thicker it is. This is 1/4 inch wall. It didn't come with any tube adapters because these innards are threaded. To get the new tie rod to be the right length, I just put this old one in there, and then I tightened it up to where the new tie rod was the same length. Unfortunately, the throw on the arm and the high steer arm are a little bit different, so you can't just lay them next to each other and line them up that way, but doing it the way I did was pretty easy. All right, we've got the disc brakes on, new rotors, and we just got the tie rod high steer arms on with the tie rod. One thing you can't really see in this video that well is that instead of running the dust shields, I've got some steel washers in between the high steer arm and the brake caliper just to make up that difference. Now, if you decide to run it without these washers, you'll see that caliper is just too close to the rotor. You probably won't be able to run it. The steering kit I got from Trail Gear is awesome, but there is one thing it didn't have, and that was long enough bolts. The stock bolts without the high steer arms obviously are really short. The aftermarket bolts that they offered were actually too long. Once I threaded them through, the bolt was touching the rotor. Obviously that doesn't work. So what I did is I threaded the nut all the way down the bolt and then just chopped off about 1/4 inch from each of them. Then I backed the nut off so it would preserve those threads. Like I said earlier, this is the last video before putting this front axle back in the Samurai. So in the next one, we'll definitely have it going in. We'll be hooking up all the steering and seeing how this thing's gonna sit with the spring over, the new perches, and these new shackles. But this is the fun part. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you haven't been to my channel yet, go check it out. I got a bunch more Samurai videos on there. A lot of wheeling videos to come once this thing gets out on the road. Stay tuned. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming for the Samurai and the Suburban. A few product reviews as well. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. See you guys next time.